You know that feeling when your brain just feels sunburned?
Oh, sunburned. Yeah, that is actually the perfect word for it.
Right. Like you've spent the entire day just staring at a glaring screen.
Tapping between like 30 open tabs.
Exactly. You're jumping frantically between tabs. You're absorbing this relentless, chaotic stream of notifications and news alerts and, overlapping conversation.
That's exhausting.
It really is. You get to the end of the day and your mind is just radiating this invisible heat. It's a very specific kind of modern cognitive fatigue.
It really is. And it stems from the fact that we're constantly running our cognitive engines at the absolute red line,
Yeah.
We process more information in a single afternoon than our ancestors might have processed in like a month.
A month.
Easily. The brain it never truly gets a moment to power down and cool off.
Well, if you have ever felt that overwhelming need to just hit pause, to find a way to escape the crushing weight of that information overload, you're going to absolutely love today's deep dive.
I am really excited about this one.
Me too, because today we are looking at a literal blueprint for an auditory cryogenic chamber.
Which just sounds so cool.
Doesn't it? We're pulling from this really fascinating Substack post by 𝗧�𗓿. It's from a publication called JJ's Scribblings, and it's dated March 14, 2026.
Right.
The post is titled Cryo-Chill, the Antarctic Archive. And our mission today is to explore this massive 1 hour and 34-minute continuous audio mix that Jano built.
And this is the crucial part.
Yeah, the catch is it's explicitly designed not as music. Jane actually calls it a sonic habitat.
Yeah, the intention behind framing it as a habitat rather than an album is what makes this project so compelling to me.
How so?
Well, this isn't, a playlist you throw on in the background while you host a dinner party.
Right. Or try to hit a personal best at the gym.
Exactly. It's an environment. It's engineered at the very specific intersection of art and neuroscience. The creator used this precise mathematical, neurological, and acoustic system to basically construct a mental space where time literally stretches out.
Wow.
And the mind is forced into a state of suspended calm.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand what 𝗧�𗓿 built, we have to understand how it breaks basically every single rule of traditional music.
It really does throw the rule book out the window.
Right. Like listening to a traditional album is like walking into an art gallery. You look at one painting, you absorb it, and then you move to the next discrete piece of art.
Sure.
But what 𝗧� has built here is more like walking into a custom-built, climate-controlled freezer where the heavy seal doors lock behind you.
That is a terrifying but accurate analogy. And what's fascinating here is the absolute refusal to rely on the structures that our brains have been trained to expect from audio.
Like verses and choruses and stuff.
Exactly. There is no traditional song form in this entire 94-minute archive. None.
No verses at all.
No verses. There are no choruses. You won't find, like, a bridge that steadily builds up tension before dropping into a catchy melodic hook. It's just not there.
Instead, the project is actually broken down into 34 individual tracks. But if you were just listening to the continuous mix, you wouldn't even realize they were separate files.
You really wouldn't. They just flow.
Yeah, each track functions as what Jansch calls an evolving frozen landscape, lasting about 2 to 4 minutes each. But they bleed into one another completely seamlessly.
And that seamlessness is the first critical mechanism for the psychological effect he's going for.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, when you listen to traditional music, or really when you consume almost any modern media, your brain is constantly engaging in something called predictive coding.
Predictive coding.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that means our brains are basically just guessing what's going to happen next. Like when you're watching a horror movie and the music suddenly gets dead quiet, your brain goes into absolute overdrive because it's anticipating the jump scare.
That is a perfect analogy, yes. Your brain is a prediction machine. In pop music, you hear a verse, and your brain subconsciously anticipates the chorus.
Right.
You hear a rising snare drum roll, and you brace for the beat to drop.
Oh, yeah, like the big EDM drops.
Exactly. And that constant cycle of tension and release, of anticipation and payoff, it triggers dopamine, but it also keeps your brain incredibly active.
It keeps your emotional temperature elevated.
Precisely. So by stripping away that traditional structure, Jano removes those sharp auditory edges. There are no sudden dynamic changes, no surprising chord progressions.
So what happens to the brain then?
Well, without those structural cues, your brain's predictive coding engine eventually it runs out of things to guess.
It just gives up.
Pretty much. It gives up the anticipation and allows itself to settle into a suspended neutral state.
That is incredible. And what blows my mind is the tool set used to build this highly sophisticated brain hacking environment.
Oh, this part is great.
Right. You would naturally assume a project this structurally and neurologically complex requires some multi-million-dollar Hollywood studio with racks of analog synthesizers.
I think so, yeah.
But Jowie lays out the entire process right at the top of the post. It's basically a mix of human input combined with ChatGPT and an AI tool called Producer.ai.
Yeah.
And the core software holding it all together is just Audacity version 3.7.7 running on a Linux Ubuntu 25.ben operating system.
It is a brilliant contrast, isn't it?
It's wild.
You have this incredibly ethereal, atmospheric, psychological habitat being constructed using some of the most utilitarian, open-source, nuts-and-bolts tools available to anyone with a laptop.
Yeah, it's so accessible.
It highlights a shift in modern audio production. The power of a project like this, it no longer lies in having expensive exclusive gear. The power is entirely in the absolute precision of the system's design.
Which naturally brings us to the actual engineering of this thing. Because if you throw out verses and choruses and rhythm and melody, what is holding a 94-minute piece of continuous audio together?
You mean, how does it not just become random noise?
Exactly. How do you keep it from just degrading into a meandering collection of noise?
Well, you have to build an entirely new framework. You replace the missing musical structure with a psychological and acoustic structure.
Okay.
In this case, Janie built a 3-part engine where music theory and human neurology lock together perfectly.
Let's look at the foundation first, the music theory side. Everything in the Antarctic archive, every single one of those 24 seamless tracks, is strictly locked into the key of F minor.
Yes.
And the post explicitly says Janie chose this key because of its, quote, dark, contemplative gravity.
F minor is incredibly effective for this specific purpose.
Yeah.
The source material actually describes it as creating a frozen horizon that never quite resolves.
A frozen horizon.
Right. In Western music theory, minor keys often evoke introspection or sadness or mystery.
Sure, they sound moodier.
They do. But sticking rigidly to a single minor key for over an hour and a half, that does something much more specific than just making you feel slightly somber.
What does it do?
It allows the creator to sustain these massive, long drones and hovering harmonies without the listener feeling like the emotional landscape is shifting beneath their feet.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if the music modulated to a bright major key halfway through, it would jar you awake. It would break the freeze.
So we have this dark, static, frozen musical foundation. But the music is only half the equation, right? Because underneath that, Ďanež introduces a physiological trigger.
The binaural beats.
Yes, a 6 Hz binaural beat is woven into the entire mix. Now, I understand that a 6 Hz frequency sits squarely in the theta brainwave range.
The theta state is the critical target here. To give you some context, the human brain operates at different electrical frequencies depending on what you're doing.
Okay.
Beta waves are your active, alert, problem-solving state. That's the sunburn brain we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Alpha waves happen when you start to relax, maybe close your eyes. But theta waves, which oscillate between roughly 4 to 8 hertz, they represent a very specific, profound state.
Like deep sleep.
Actually, no. It's widely associated with deep meditation, trance, and the hypnagogic state just before you fall asleep. It's a level of relaxation where you are still conscious, but your mind is completely unburdened by active thought.
The Substack text actually mentions that the intention isn't to violently force the listener into a sleep state, but to gently encourage the mind to slow and settle.
Exactly.
But I have a major point of confusion here.
Whoa, what's that?
Human hearing only goes down to about 20 hertz. Anything below that is infrasound. Like, we might feel it as a vibration in our chest, but we cannot hear it.
That's entirely correct.
So how exactly do you put a 6 hertz beat to an audio file and expect the listener's brain to process it?
That is the genius of the binaural beat mechanism. You can't just play a 6 hertz tone through a speaker and hear it. To bypass the physical limitations of the human ear, you have to use a psychoacoustic trick.
A trick.
Yeah. You play a slightly different audible frequency into each ear using stereo headphones. The auditory pathways in your brainstem process the two different tones, they calculate the mathematical difference between them, and then essentially hallucinate a phantom third beat inside your head.
Wait, hallucinate? That's wild.
It is. So to generate that invisible 6 hertz pulse, Jenin plays a 174 hertz tone in the left ear and a 180 hertz tone in the right ear. Your brain does the math. 180 minus 174 equals 6.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. because the math happening behind the scenes here is just staggering. Janice didn't just pick 174 hertz and 180 hertz out of thin air.
No, absolutely not.
That 174 hertz tone sitting in the left channel, it maps almost exactly onto the musical pitch of F3, which vibrates at roughly 174.61 hertz.
It is a stunning piece of acoustic architecture.
When I read that, it felt like an absolute puzzle box unlocking. The scientific neurological hack the carrier tone used to trick the brain into generating theta waves is perfectly aligned with the foundational musical key of the entire project.
It's totally seamless.
The neurobiology and the music theory are quite literally vibrating at the identical frequency.
And that alignment is the secret to why this piece functions successfully as a habitat. 𝗧𝗧 actually wrote a beautiful description of this effect in the post.
What did they say?
Well, because these carrier frequencies cooperate perfectly with the musical key rather than clashing against it, the result is so smooth it feels, and I quote, almost as if the mind slips into cold water without a splash.
Without a splash.
Yeah.
That is such an incredibly visceral image to describe audio.
Doesn't it just give you chills? It speaks perfectly to the concept of cognitive dissonance.
How so?
When you listen to audio where frequencies clash or their structural element fights against the intended mood, your brain has to expend actual metabolic energy processing that friction.
Oh, making you more tired.
Exactly.
Yeah.
True relaxation, the kind that actively lowers your emotional temperature, requires an absolute lack of cognitive dissonance.
That makes sense.
When the tonal center, the carrier tone, and the targeted brainwave frequency all hold hands in perfect mathematical symmetry, your brain doesn't have to work to process the environment. The friction is zero. The mind can just let go.
So we have the brain fully primed.
Right.
We are locked into the frozen horizon of F minor. The theta waves are quietly pulsing in the background, and all cognitive friction has been mathematically eliminated.
Right.
But to complete this cryogenic illusion, 𝗧𝗧 manipulates one more massive element: our perception of time.
Time perception is incredibly malleable, especially when you remove visual cues. Like if you're sitting in a dark room, you rely entirely on auditory input to tell you how fast the world is moving.
And 𝗧𝗧 locks the tempo of this entire 94-minute archive at an intentionally glacial 48 beats per minute.
Which is incredibly slow.
To put that in perspective, 48 BPM is significantly slower than a healthy, resting human heartbeat.
The post describes the rhythmic motion at this speed as becoming almost geological.
Geological, like shifting tectonic plates.
Exactly. When you drag a tempo down to 48 BPM, the harmonic events, the individual notes, the shifting chords, they drift incredibly far apart. You end up with these vast, echoing canyons of space between the sounds.
I have to push back here for a second, or at least play devil's advocate.
Oh.
Because the way 𝗧𝗧 fills those canyons of space sounds like it should be an absolute technical disaster.
Really? Why?
Well, the source material says 𝗧𝗧 takes audio elements, like a sample of a vocal choir, and stretches them granularly anywhere from 500% to 2,000% beyond their original length.
Okay, yeah.
If I take a standard voice memo on my phone and slow it down by half, it sounds like a glitchy, demonic robot.
Oh, for sure.
So how does stretching an audio file by 2,000% not just destroy the audio quality and turn it into unlistenable digital garbage?
It would be digital garbage if you just slowed the tape down, which drops the pitch and creates that demonic robot effect you're talking about. But 𝗧𝗧 is using a technique called granular synthesis.
Granular synthesis. Okay, how does that work?
Imagine a strip of movie film. Instead of just playing the film slower, granular synthesis takes a razor blade, chops the audio into microscopic grains, sometimes just a few milliseconds long, and then reassembles them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it overlaps them, shuffles them, and smears them out over a massive timeline. It freezes the exact tonal quality of the sound without dropping the pitch.
That's fascinating.
So a quick 2-second vocal sample, when granularly stretched by 2,000%, it loses all of its human characteristics. The consonants disappear. It becomes this massive shifting atmospheric drone that simply hovers in the air.
And to compound that hovering effect, the reverb tails are pushed to the absolute extreme. We are talking about the decaying echo of a sound lasting 20 to 40 seconds long.
That's huge.
It is. If you clap your hands in your living room, the sound is dead in a fraction of a second. In this habitat, a single crystalline chime hangs in the air for almost a minute before fully fading.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the use of granular stretching and massive reverb is a deliberate, aggressive rejection of our modern media diet.
How do you mean?
Well, in our daily lives, audio is a mechanism to push us forward. A notification ping demands an immediate physical reaction.
Right, you grab your phone instantly.
Exactly. A fast-paced video forces your brain to constantly jump to the next jump cut, the next piece of data. By granularly stretching these sounds, by taking literal minutes to unfold a simple volume fade, Jane forcefully strips away that forward momentum.
You literally can't rush it.
You can't. When an audio environment evolves so imperceptibly that you can't tell when one sound ends and another begins, your brain stops trying to rush forward. You stop anticipating the future, and you are forced to simply exist in that expanded geological space.
We've covered the heavy math, the neurology of binaural beats, the granular manipulation of geological time, but what does this actually sound like to the human ear?
That's the best part.
Yeah. If you put on a pair of high-quality headphones, close your eyes, and sit in the dark, what is the sonic palette of the Antarctic archive?
The specific textures Janie chose are highly evocative, and they rely heavily on a field of study called psychoacoustics.
Psychoacoustics.
Yeah. The source post lists a variety of elements. You have these granular, ice-like drones, sub-bass glacial hums, frosty high-frequency chimes.
There are also reverse piano fragments and extremely slow-attack synth pads that swell up out of nowhere, plus bowed metal and glass harmonics.
So many interesting textures.
Right, and threading through all of this, holding the whole 94 minutes together like a sonic glue, are heavily processed field recordings of distant Arctic wind.
What is so vital to understand about these specific textures, particularly the glass harmonics and the bowed metal, is how they interact with human psychology to simulate physical temperature.
Simulate temperature with sound.
Yes. These aren't just pretty musical notes. They're auditory representations of physical states. Psychoacoustics tells us that the human brain associates very high, brittle, resonant frequencies, like a finger rubbing the rim of a crystal glass, with the physical properties of ice and freezing temperatures.
Well, that makes so much sense.
Right. When you hear the deep, resonant, metallic groan of bowed metal surrounded by 40 seconds of reverb, your brain doesn't just hear a cello playing a low note.
No.
It visualizes the immense physical weight of a shifting glacier echoing across an empty cavern.
Wow.
And the wind isn't just a sound effect layered on top. It provides a spatial acoustic signature that reinforces the vastness of the polar environment you've been mentally dropped into.
So what does this all mean? We have a 34-track sequence built by an artist collaborating with AI and open source software.
Yep.
It's strictly anchored in F minor, hiding an invisible 6 Hz theta brainwaves stretched to a bradycardic 48 beats per minute and filled with the psychoacoustic sounds of glacial ice and vast, empty space.
It's a masterpiece of engineering.
𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗔𝗓 actually sums up the ultimate goal beautifully in the text. Quote, "The intent is simple. This music is meant to lower the emotional temperature."
It is an open invitation to intentionally freeze yourself within the ice, to escape the heat of the digital world.
If the system works as Janae designed it, you lose track of time. The claustrophobic, anxious space in your mind opens up, the predictive coding shuts down,
Yeah.
and the audio stops functioning as music to be listened to and simply turns into an atmosphere to be inhabited.
When you look at the sheer technical and psychological totality of what Jane Ois has engineered here, it really emphasizes the profound, almost dangerous impact that our auditory environment has on our physical and emotional states.
It really does. The combination of that F minor key, the theta waves, that glacial pacing, and those icy textures, it is a masterclass in designing a targeted psychological intervention using nothing but sound waves.
It also leaves us with a fascinating and perhaps slightly unsettling thought to consider regarding the future of this technology.
Uh-oh. What's that?
Well, we just spent this entire deep dive exploring how a creator used AI tools and precise acoustic math to deliberately hack the brain, forcing it into a theta state to induce calm. If artificial intelligence is already capable of engineering audio habitats that can bypass our conscious mind and directly manipulate our brainwaves,
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
how long until our smart homes, our offices, or even our commercial shopping centers start dynamically generating these hidden frequencies?
That's wow.
Could we soon be walking through environments that are constantly invisibly adjusting our emotional temperatures and brainwave states without us ever noticing or giving consent? And what does that mean for everyday chaotic city noise? If calm can be engineered, how much is the unengineered noise of our lives raising our temperature?
Oh, wow. That changes the entire context. It's one thing to willingly step into the freezer to cool down your sunburned brain. It is entirely another to realize the thermostat could be controlled by an algorithm you can't even see, or that the everyday sirens and notifications are constantly boiling the water.
That is definitely something to chew on the next time you put your headphones on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Antarctic archive. We invite you to take a much closer look and a much closer listen to your own sonic environments this week. Stay curious, and we will catch you next time.